I never thought I'd be the kind of man who tells this kind of story. You grow up thinking infidelity is something that happens to other people. People on talk shows, people who marry for the wrong reasons, people who rush in too fast. Not to someone like me. I played everything by the book. I took my time. I waited until I was financially stable, emotionally ready. I fell in love slowly, cautiously, like a man stepping onto a frozen lake, 1 foot at a time. Her name was Sarah. We met at a 4th of July cookout in Austin, Texas. She was there with a mutual friend, wearing this simple white dress with little blue flowers that caught in the breeze. I remember thinking, she doesn't look like someone trying to be noticed. That's what made her impossible not to notice. We started talking by the drink table, and within 20 minutes, I felt like I'd known her for years. She had this way of listening, eyes locked on yours like you were the only thing happening in the world. We dated for nearly 2 years before I proposed. I thought I was being smart, careful, making sure we were truly compatible, that our values lined up. She said yes through tears. That was one of the best nights of my life. Our wedding was small, elegant, just close friends and family in a vineyard outside of Santa Barbara. Everyone said we looked so happy, and we were. Or at least, I thought we were. The first few months of marriage were a dream. We moved into a small house in the suburbs, nothing fancy, just something we could afford together. I worked in marketing at a mid-sized tech firm. She'd been doing freelance graphic design but was trying to build her own client base. We had slow mornings with coffee and jazz, made dinner together most nights, took long walks around the neighborhood. Sometimes we'd stay up late watching terrible reality shows and laughing until our stomachs hurt. I'd lie in bed watching her sleep and think, this is what peace feels like. But peace is fragile, and mine shattered with one phone call. It was late November, just a few days before Thanksgiving. I was working late, nothing unusual. I had a presentation the next day. Sarah had told me she was going to have dinner with her friend Maya, someone she'd known since college. I didn't think twice about it. Around 9:15, my phone rang. It was Maya. "Hey," she said, her voice a little unsure. "Is Sarah with you?" "No," I said. "She told me she was with you." There was a pause, a long one. Then Maya said, "I haven't seen Sarah in over a week." My stomach dropped. I remember the cold sweat, the spinning, the way the world just suddenly stopped making sense. I mumbled something and hung up. I tried calling her, straight to voicemail. Texted her, nothing. I waited, pacing the living room, checking the clock every 30 seconds. An hour passed, then another. Finally, just after midnight, she walked through the front door like nothing had happened. "Hey, babe," she said, setting her purse down. "Sorry I'm late. Maya and I lost track of time." I stood there frozen. My heart was hammering. "I talked to Maya," she said. Her eyes blinked just a flicker too long. "What?" "She said she hasn't seen you in over a week." Sarah froze. Then the mask slipped, just for a second. It was like watching a crack run through glass. She must have forgotten," she said, reaching for her phone. "Let me call her." "Don't," I said. "Don't lie to me again." The silence that followed was unbearable. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the clock above the mantel. And then, without looking at me, she said, "It's not what you think." But it was, of course it was. I knew it the way you know you're bleeding before you see the cut. Over the next hour, the truth came out in pieces, hesitant, reluctant, dragged from her like rustic nails from old wood. His name was Daniel, someone she met through a design client. He was charming, successful, lived in LA. They'd met a few times for coffee, and eventually coffee turned into dinner, then into a weekend away. The first time she slept with him, she told herself it was a mistake, but she did it again, and again. I didn't yell, I didn't throw anything. I just sat there numb, listening to the sound of my life falling apart. She cried, of course, said she was confused, that she still loved me, that it didn't mean anything, but it meant everything. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling while she cried herself into silence beside me. The next morning I called in sick. She tried to talk. I told her I needed time, space. She packed a small bag and went to stay at her sister's place. And just like that, the house felt too quiet, too hollow, like someone had scooped the soul out of it. I wandered around aimlessly for hours, sat on the couch staring at nothing, tried to eat but couldn't keep anything down. Everything tasted like ash. I kept thinking, how did I not see this coming? Was I too trusting, too blind, too comfortable? I replayed every conversation, every dinner, every time she'd smiled and said I love you while hiding this behind her eyes. I thought about the vows we made, about the nights we danced barefoot in the kitchen, about the way she used to look at me like I was the only person in the world. I wondered if she ever really meant any of it. The days blurred together. I stopped shaving, stopped answering calls. My friends tried to reach out, but I couldn't talk to anyone without breaking down. Even my own reflection felt like a stranger's face. One afternoon I found myself driving without really knowing where I was going. I ended up parked outside the hotel she'd stayed at with him. I knew because I had checked our credit card statements. The name was right there, a little boutique hotel downtown. I sat there for an hour just staring, imagining them together inside, laughing, kissing, sharing a bed that was supposed to be mine. I think part of me wanted to go in and ask the front desk if they remembered her, if they saw her smile, if she looked happy. But I didn't. I just sat there until the sun went down and the streetlights came on. Then I drove home and cried like I hadn't since I was a child. The next week was a haze of heartbreak and anger. Every time I thought I had cried enough, something small would break me open again. Her mug in the sink, her shampoo in the shower, the imprint of her body still faintly there on her side of the bed. I debated whether to throw it all away, burn every trace, or leave it untouched like some kind of emotional crime scene. I didn't answer her messages. At first, they were long and full of apologies, then shorter, then silence. That silence should have been a relief, but somehow it hurt worse. It meant she'd stopped trying, or maybe she was with him. That thought haunted me more than any other. Was she lying in his bed now, laughing at the things I used to say, telling him she felt more alive than she ever did with me? One night I sat in the living room and opened an old photo album. There we were on our road trip to Oregon, her with the wind in her hair, me trying to look cool with my arm around her. Her smile was genuine. At least it looked that way. But how much of what I remembered was real? Was I in love with her, or with the version of her I wanted to believe in? I hated that I still missed her, hated that my heart could ache for someone who had ripped it apart. But emotions don't follow logic. They just flood you, drown you, leave you gasping for something solid. About 2 weeks after she left, I came home from a grocery run and found her waiting on the porch. She looked small, nervous, holding her coat tight around her like it could protect her from what she'd done. "Can we talk?" she asked. I should have said no. I should have told her to leave and never come back, but I stepped aside and let her in. We sat in silence for a long time. Finally, she said, "I'm sorry. I know that doesn't mean much now, but I need to say it anyway." I nodded. I didn't trust myself to speak. "I messed everything up," she continued. "I was scared. Things got so real so fast. You were perfect. You were everything I ever wanted, and I panicked. I thought maybe I didn't deserve that. I thought if I ruined it first, it wouldn't hurt as bad if it eventually fell apart." I stared at her, trying to reconcile the woman I married with the one who sat in front of me. "So, you ruined it to protect yourself?" I asked. "That's what you're saying?" She looked down. "I know how stupid it sounds." "Not stupid, just cruel." We talked for hours, about everything and nothing. She told me she'd ended things with Daniel, that he wasn't who she thought he was, that she didn't love him, that she didn't even really like him. I wanted to believe that. God, I wanted to. But something in me had shifted. I wasn't the same man she walked away from. The trust that once wrapped around our marriage like armor had cracked. I told her I needed time. She said she understood. Before she left, she touched my arm. "I still love you," she whispered. And for a moment, I almost said it back. But I didn't. Because love wasn't enough. Not anymore. I started therapy after that. I didn't tell anyone at first, not even my closest friend, Marcus. There's this pressure on men to tough it out, to drown pain in whiskey or jokes, but I needed something real. My therapist was a middle-aged guy named David who wore corduroy jackets and always smelled faintly like coffee and cedar. He didn't give me answers. He gave me questions, made me dig through my memories, confront my patterns, and slowly, painfully, I started to find the shape of myself again. I learned that grief isn't just about loss. It's about identity. I wasn't just mourning Sarah. I was mourning the version of me who believed in forever. The man who thought love could fix everything. I started jogging again, just a mile at first, then 2, then 5. I wasn't chasing health. I was chasing silence. The kind that came when my breath was ragged and my legs were burning and I couldn't think about anything except the next step. I started sleeping a little more, eating a little better, smiling once in a while. I even said yes when Marcus dragged me to a concert downtown. Life didn't return all at once. It trickled back in, drop by drop.
A few months passed. Then one day, out of nowhere, Sarah showed up again. This time at a bookstore cafe I used to frequent before all this happened. I didn't see her come in. She just appeared beside my table, like a memory given shape. "Hey," she said cautiously. "Mind if I sit?" I wanted to say no. I wanted to protect the fragile peace I had built, but curiosity is a stubborn thing. She looked different. Not in a dramatic way, just softer, less put together, like life had humbled her too. We talked, not about us, about books, the weather, her sister's new baby, safe things. At the end, she asked if we could talk again sometime. I told her maybe. And I meant it. Not because I wanted her back, but because I needed to know that healing didn't mean hate, that moving on didn't mean forgetting, that I could be kind without being weak. That night I stood by the window and watched the lights of the city blur through the glass. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel broken. Just changed.
Spring came, and with it, a strange sense of possibility. The kind you feel when you open all the windows after a long winter and let the dust and cold air escape. I had started to accept that my life was no longer something that had gone wrong, but something that was simply in motion. A river that had changed course, whether I liked it or not. I hadn't seen Sarah in weeks, and I didn't expect to. But then, late one Sunday afternoon, I got a message from her. Just 4 words. "Can we talk, please?" I stared at it for a long time. My finger hovered over the delete button, but instead, I typed back. "Okay, my place, sex." She arrived a few minutes early, holding 2 coffees like some kind of peace offering. I took them both, not saying anything, and we sat on the couch like 2 people who used to know each other in another life. "I signed the lease on a new apartment," she said finally. "Downtown, near the design studio I'm freelancing with." I nodded. "That's good." She hesitated. It's weird, starting over. Being alone again. Cooking for one. Watching Netflix and having no one to laugh with. Yeah, I know. She looked at me with those same wide, vulnerable eyes I'd fallen in love with years ago. "I think about you every day." I didn't say anything. There was nothing to say. She leaned back, sighing. "I'm not here to ask for anything. I needed you to know that. I'm not trying to win you back. I just didn't want you to think I forgot, or that I walked away without feeling it." That hit something in me, because as much as I hated what she did, I never wanted her to be a ghost. I wanted her to carry it too, to remember, to hurt. Not out of selfish cruelty, but out of the selfish need to know that I mattered. We talked for a while longer. When she left, she hugged me. It was long and quiet and full of things neither of us could say. And when the door closed behind her, I stood there, in the silence, for a long time, wondering what it meant that I didn't feel angry anymore. Just tired. And maybe, deep down, free. Over the next few months, I started saying yes to life more often. Yes to dinners with friends, yes to weekend road trips, yes to awkward dates that made me laugh more than they made me hope. I wasn't looking for love, I was looking for laughter, for connection, for the reminder that I was still capable of feeling. There was one woman, Emily, who I saw a few times. She was kind and clever and asked good questions. Nothing happened between us beyond a few kisses and late-night conversations, but she reminded me that new people don't erase the past, they just help you carry it differently. One night, Marcus and I were at a bar watching a game. Out of nowhere, he said, "You seem lighter." I laughed. "You calling me fat?" "No, man, I mean your face. You used to look like someone walking through fog all the time. Now it's like you're starting to see the road again." I nodded, grateful. Sometimes the people closest to you see your healing before you do. I started writing more. Nothing dramatic, just little journal entries, poems, fragments of thought. It helped me make sense of the mess. Helped me chart the territory between grief and growth. The one poem I wrote ended with the line, "Maybe the scar isn't the wound. It's the evidence I survived." I didn't show it to anyone, not even Sarah, especially not Sarah, because some things are just for me now. And that was part of the healing too, learning where the boundaries are. One afternoon, I was walking through a farmer's market when I saw her. Not Sarah, Emily. She was with someone, a tall guy with glasses who made her laugh so hard she had to grab his arm to stay steady. I felt something twist in my chest, but it wasn't jealousy. It was nostalgia. Gratitude, even. For a moment in time that had passed and passed gently. I nodded to myself and kept walking. Life was moving, and so was I.
I didn't hear from Sarah for a while after that.
Weeks turned into months. The seasons shifted again. Summer rolled in with its dry heat and golden light, and with it came a kind of quiet in my chest. I stopped waiting for things, for her name to pop up on my phone, for old memories to sting the way they used to. I wasn't healed, not completely, but I was healing. There's a difference. Healing is slow and uneven. Some days I'd wake up feeling whole. Other days I'd catch a scent that reminded me of her and spend the rest of the afternoon in silence. But I was learning how to let those moments pass through me without anchoring to them. It was around that time I decided to travel. Nothing grand, just a solo trip along the coast, up through Oregon and into Washington. I packed light, took time off work, and told Marcus he was in charge of watering my plants, which he immediately killed. But that's Marcus. I wasn't trying to run away. I just needed distance, physical space to match the emotional one I'd been building. I stayed in little roadside inns, hiked quiet trails, watched the ocean from cliffs, and drank black coffee in diners where no one knew my name. I filled notebooks with thoughts, most of them messy and repetitive, but honest. One afternoon, somewhere outside Portland, I found this small used bookstore, the kind with creaky floors and dust dancing in the light. I spent hours there, flipping through old novels, finding scribbled notes in the margins left by strangers. I bought a worn copy of The Great Gatsby because it reminded me of something Sarah once said, that every story is about love, even when it's not. That night in the motel, I reread the entire thing in one sitting. When I closed the book, I thought about Gatsby and his green light, always reaching, never quite touching. And I wondered if that had been me too. Chasing something I thought was love, only to find it was just an idea I was in love with. I came back from the trip different. Not changed in some dramatic way, but steadier. My house didn't feel haunted anymore. I started making little improvements, painting the bedroom, changing the curtains, replacing the photos on the walls with images I'd taken myself. I wasn't erasing the past. I was just reclaiming the space, rewriting the story of the place I lived in. Then one evening in early fall, I got an invitation. Sarah was hosting a small gallery show. Her first. She'd partnered with a local artist and done the design work for the exhibit. The invitation was simple. No message attached, just the date, time, and location. I stared at it for a long time. Part of me wanted to ignore it. The other part, the curious part, wanted to see what she had created. I didn't tell anyone I was going, I just showed up, blending into the small crowd. The space was warm and quiet, full of soft lighting and delicate lines. I saw her across the room talking to someone, laughing. She looked happy. Not the forced, polished happy I remembered from our early days, but something more grounded. She saw me before I could look away, and for a moment, everything froze. Then she smiled. Not the kind of smile that says, "I want you back," but the kind that says, "Thank you for coming." She walked over slowly, like she wasn't sure if I'd stay. "You came. I wasn't sure you would." "I wasn't either," I replied. We stood there, surrounded by art and strangers, and the weight between us didn't feel heavy anymore, just familiar. We talked for a few minutes about her work, about my trip, about nothing that could hurt. Before she left, she said, "I'm glad you're okay." And for the first time, I truly was. After the gallery show, I didn't expect to see her again, not anytime soon. But the next morning, as I sat on my porch drinking coffee, watching the quiet rhythm of the street wake up, I realized something. I wasn't dreading the day. I wasn't replaying old scenes. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even particularly sad. That used to seem impossible. Now it just felt like part of growing older. Some things break you so deeply, you think you'll never be the same. But then you wake up one morning, and you're not the same. And that's okay. I started seeing a woman named Claire not long after that. We met at a friend's housewarming party. She had this quiet confidence, the kind that didn't need to announce itself. We talked about books, travel, the best kind of breakfast sandwich. She asked questions that made me think and didn't fill silence just to fill it. We went on a few dates, nothing too serious at first, just dinners, walks, long drives with no destination.
but I liked how she made space for my past without letting it define me. I told her the story one night, the short version. She didn't flinch. She didn't try to fix it. She just listened, then held my hand across the table and said, "It sounds like you gave everything you had. That's not weakness." That stuck with me, because for a long time, I'd blamed myself for what happened with Sarah, for not being enough, for not seeing it coming, for loving too hard, or maybe not hard enough. But here was someone telling me that love, even when it ends, still matters, still means something. One weekend, Claire and I drove up to a cabin near Lake Tahoe. No cell service, no distractions, just trees, cold air, and the sound of water against the shore. We cooked together, played cards by the fire, fell asleep tangled in each other like we'd done it 100 times. It was peaceful. Not perfect, but real. I remember lying there, her breath soft against my neck, thinking, I can do this. I can love again. Not like before, not with the same blind faith, but maybe with something better, with clarity, with presence. We didn't rush anything. We didn't talk about forever. We just lived in the now, and that was enough. One morning, a few months into whatever we were, I got a message from Sarah. It was short. "Can I call you?" I stared at it, my thumb hovering over the screen. I asked Claire if she'd be okay with that. Not because I needed her permission, but because I wanted to be honest. Claire looked at me and said, "If you need to talk to her to let go, talk to her. Just don't lie to yourself about why you're doing it." That honesty was part of why I cared about her so much. I stepped outside and called Sarah. Her voice was soft, almost hesitant. She told me she was moving, across the country, a job opportunity in Boston, a fresh start. She didn't ask to see me, didn't ask for anything, just wanted to tell me before I heard it from someone else. "You were my great love," she said near the end. "I know I didn't treat you like it, but it's true. I just wasn't ready." I didn't know what to say to that, so I said the only thing that felt real. "I hope you find peace." She whispered thank you and hung up. I stood there for a while, listening to the wind in the trees. Then I walked back inside, where Claire was curled up with a book, and I sat down beside her without a word. She reached for my hand, and I let her hold it. And in that moment, I knew something had shifted again. Not backwards, not towards Sarah, but forward, into whatever came next.
Claire and I didn't talk much about Sarah after that call. She understood that some things didn't need to be revisited once they were let go of. I admired that about her, her ability to give space without making it feel like distance. Life with Claire wasn't dramatic or intense the way it had been with Sarah. There weren't grand gestures or breathless declarations. It was quieter, more grounded. We argued sometimes, sure, but we always found our way back to each other without slamming doors or sleeping in silence. I started to see that love didn't need to be chaos to be real. It could be steady, safe. One rainy Saturday afternoon, we went to a flea market outside Sacramento. It was one of those places where you find old records, mismatched plates, furniture that smelled like history. Claire found this old Polaroid camera, the kind with the fold-out lens. She smiled like a kid and said, "Let's take a photo right now. Something ordinary. Something we'll want to remember later for no reason." I laughed but agreed, and she took a shot of me standing under an awning, holding a bag of oranges with a dumb grin on my face. The picture came out blurry, my hair damped from the rain, but she kept it in her wallet. Said it made her smile every time she saw it. That little moment stuck with me, because for so long, I had measured love by its intensity, how high the highs were, how hard I fell. But maybe love was really about the small things, the everyday things, the blurry photos that made you smile for no reason. I started seeing my parents more often too. They'd always worried about me, even when I didn't say much. My mom had cried when I told her what Sarah did. My dad, a man of few words, had just put a hand on my shoulder and nodded. That gesture meant everything. They both liked Claire, said she had a kindness in her that reminded them of someone they couldn't quite place. I think what they really meant was that she reminded them of a version of me they hadn't seen in a long time. One night while we were making dinner together, Claire looked at me and said, "Do you think you'll ever be ready again? For everything?" She didn't say the word marriage, but it hung there,
unspoken. I thought about it for a long time, stirred the sauce absent-mindedly while my mind drifted. I don't know, I said finally. I think maybe I'm not supposed to be ready in the way I used to think. I don't think anyone ever feels totally ready. I think you just choose, day by day. She nodded, quietly. That was one of the last deep talks we had before everything began to change again. It started small. She became distant, not cold, just preoccupied. I chalked it up to work stress. Then she started spending more weekends with her sister in the city. Then she stopped texting me goodnight. I didn't want to believe I was losing her. Not again. Not like that. But one night, as we sat across from each other at a quiet restaurant, I asked her outright, "Is there someone else?" She looked down at her plate, took a long breath. Then she nodded. "It just happened," she whispered. I felt something in me go numb. Not the kind of pain that explodes, but the kind that seeps in slowly like frostbite. I didn't yell. I didn't ask for details. I just nodded, paid the bill, walked her to her car. She cried. I didn't. Not then. I was too tired to cry. Too tired to break open again. That night, I sat in my car outside my house for almost 2 hours. Engine off, windows fogging up, just breathing, just existing. It wasn't the same as with Sarah. This betrayal didn't destroy me, but it did remind me of something I'd tried to forget. That no matter how careful you are, how honest, how loving, people will still leave. People will still lie. The next morning, I packed up everything that reminded me of Claire. The blurry Polaroid, her toothbrush, the mug she always used. I didn't throw them away. I just put them in a box, taped it shut, and slid it into the back of the closet. Out of sight, out of reach, out of mind.
The days after Claire left were strangely quiet. Not the kind of silence that aches, but the kind that feels like snow. Soft, cold, inevitable. I went back to my routines, or what was left of them. Woke up, made coffee, went to work, came home, slept. Repeat. I didn't talk to many people. Not because I didn't have anyone, but because I didn't want to hear the usual things. You'll be okay. She didn't deserve you. Time heals. I'd heard it all before, and while some of it might have been true, none of it helped in the moment. The truth is, heartbreak doesn't get easier just because you've survived it once. If anything, it cuts deeper the second time. Because now you know the weight of it. You know what it takes to crawl out, and you're already tired before the fall even finishes. But I wasn't shattered this time. Just worn down. Like a tree that's been through one storm too many. I started walking more. Miles and miles with no destination. Through neighborhoods I didn't know, down by the river, into the woods behind the park. There was something calming about it. The way your thoughts unravel when your body keeps moving. Sometimes I'd catch a scent, a particular kind of perfume, a certain shampoo in the breeze, and I'd feel the memory of Sarah or Claire pressing in from nowhere. I didn't fight it. I just let it pass. Acknowledged it like a stranger on the street and kept walking. One night, I ended up at an old diner on the edge of town. The kind that stays open 24 hours and hasn't changed since the 80s. I sat at the counter and ordered pancakes at 11 p.m. just because I could. The waitress was an older woman named Donna. She called me hun and poured me coffee without asking. We didn't talk much, but before I left, she said, "You look like someone who's been trying real hard to outrun something." I laughed a little. I guess I am. She gave me a look that felt like it saw through every layer I tried to build. Sometimes it ain't about outrunning. Sometimes it's about standing still long enough to know what's chasing you. I thanked her and left a bigger tip than I could afford. That night, lying in bed, I thought about what she said.
I thought about all the ways I'd tried to rebuild myself after Sarah and how I'd done it again after Claire. Maybe that was the problem. I kept trying to return to a version of myself that didn't exist anymore. The me before betrayal, before disappointment, before everything changed. But that man was gone. And maybe that was okay. Maybe the real work wasn't about going back. Maybe it was about learning how to be someone new. I started writing again, more seriously this time. I didn't care if anyone read it. It wasn't about sharing. It was about understanding. I wrote about loss, about expectations, about the way love can turn into something unrecognizable when it's not tended to. I wrote about guilt and silence and the way people sometimes choose comfort over truth. I filled journals with thoughts I didn't even know I had. And slowly I started to feel something shift. Not dramatically, but enough. Enough to breathe a little easier. Enough to sleep through the night. Enough to smile without forcing it. One afternoon I ran into Marcus at the grocery store. He looked at me for a second and said, "You've got that look again." "What look?" I asked. "Like you're not waiting for anything anymore." I didn't answer. Just smiled and kept walking. That night, I sat on the back steps of my house, sipping tea and listening to the cicadas hum. The sky was a deep, endless blue, and the stars blinked like old friends returning after a long absence. I wasn't thinking about Sarah. I wasn't thinking about Claire. I was just present. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't haunted by what I'd lost. I was quietly thankful for what I'd found. Myself.
It was sometime in late November when I saw Sarah again. I was walking out of a bookstore downtown, hands full of early Christmas gifts I hadn't planned to buy, when I almost ran into her. She looked different, but not drastically. Just older in a way I couldn't quite describe. A little more settled, a little less unsure. She smiled when she saw me, and I smiled back, more out of instinct than anything else. We stood there for a moment, both of us holding onto bags, both of us unsure who should speak first. "Hey," she said finally. "Hey," I replied. "I didn't know you were in town." "Just visiting," she said. "My sister had her second baby." "Congratulations," I said, genuinely meaning it. She nodded. There was a pause. Then she said, "You look well." "I am," I said. "You?" She nodded again. "Yeah. It took time, but yeah." We didn't say much more after that. Just a few polite words. She didn't ask about my life, and I didn't ask about hers. There was a calm in that, strangely enough. Like we both knew there was no need to revisit anything. We'd each walked through our own storm and somehow come out on the other side. That night, I found myself thinking less about her and more about how much I'd changed. There was a time I would have seen that run-in as a sign, something to dissect and obsess over. But now, it was just a moment, a brief, passing moment, and that felt like progress. I spent Thanksgiving at my parents' house. My brother brought his kids, and the whole place was filled with noise and spilled juice and laughter echoing down the hallway. My dad carved the turkey, like he always did, and my mom tried to make me take home enough leftovers to feed a small army. I sat at the end of the table, watching it all, and realized something quietly powerful. I didn't feel like an outsider anymore. For a long time, I had carried this weight with me everywhere I went, like I was walking around wrapped in fog no one else could see. But that fog had lifted. I was here, present, whole, or at least whole enough. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat on the porch with my dad. He lit a cigar, offered me one, and I declined, like I always did. We sat there in silence for a while, watching the stars. "You've changed," he said. "Yeah?" "Yeah. You used to hold your breath when you talked about the past, like you were afraid of it catching fire. Now you talk like someone who's made peace with it." I didn't respond right away. I just looked out at the dark. I think I was holding on to too many ghosts, trying to make sense of things that don't always need to make sense. He nodded. "Sometimes it's not about making sense. Sometimes it's about accepting it doesn't." That night, I dreamed of nothing. No old memories, no broken promises. Just silence, peaceful and still. When I woke up, I felt rested in a way I hadn't in years. In the weeks that followed, I started volunteering at a local writing program, high school kids mostly. Some of them had been through more by 16 than I had by 30. They wrote with fire, with anger, with beauty. I saw myself in some of them, the way they poured their pain into words. I helped them shape stories, but they reminded me how powerful it is just to tell the truth. One of the students, a girl named Alicia, once wrote in a poem, "I'm not broken, I'm just rearranged." I carried that line with me for days, maybe forever, because it described me better than anything else had. I wasn't who I was before Sarah, or before Claire, but that didn't mean I was less, just different, rearranged. And maybe that was the whole point of surviving something, that you don't come back the same, but you come back honest, real, present.
Winter arrived without much warning. The air turned crisp overnight, and the streets were suddenly lined with lights and wreaths and the quiet hum of holiday songs playing from shop windows. I found myself alone on Christmas Eve, but not in a sad way. My family had gone out of town, and I had turned down a few invitations from friends, choosing instead to stay home, make dinner for one, and listen to the kind of music that didn't demand attention. I lit a few candles, poured a glass of wine, and sat by the window, watching the snow fall, soft and slow. There was something almost cinematic about it, the way the world outside went quiet. I thought back to the Christmases I spent with Sarah, and even that one brief holiday with Claire. The memories didn't hurt anymore, they just felt like pages from a book I'd already read, familiar but no longer alive. Around midnight, I took a walk through the neighborhood. Most houses were dark, but a few still had their lights on. I passed a window where a family sat laughing around a fireplace, the sound muted through the glass but clear enough to feel. I didn't feel envy, I just felt something like longing, soft and unhurried. A hope that one day, maybe, I'd have something like that again. But not because I needed it to feel whole, just because I knew now how to appreciate it when it came. A few days later, I got a card in the mail. No return address, just my name, handwritten in small, careful letters. Inside was a simple note. Thank you for showing me what love could be, even if I didn't know how to hold it. There was no name, but I didn't need one. I read it twice, then set it in a drawer, and didn't take it out again. It didn't change anything, but it felt like closure, like the last sentence of a long, complicated chapter. In the new year, I made a decision. I was going to leave the city, not because I was running, but because I was ready to begin again. I'd been offered a position at a nonprofit in Oregon, helping develop creative programs for youth. It was quieter work, less corporate, more meaningful. I said yes, packed my things, gave away the furniture I didn't love, kept only what mattered. On my last night in town, I visited all the old places one final time. The cafe where Sarah and I used to sit on Sunday mornings, the bridge where Claire once kissed me like she meant forever, the bookstore where I'd once seen myself in the pages of other people's stories. I didn't cry, I just walked, slow and steady, saying goodbye without words. The next morning, I hit the road before sunrise. The city disappeared behind me like a shadow slowly shrinking in the mirror. I drove with the windows cracked, even in the cold, just to feel the air on my face. And somewhere between one state line and the next, I realized I wasn't carrying it all with me anymore. Not the betrayal, not the heartbreak, not even the loneliness. Just the lessons, just the truth. I arrived in Oregon on a rainy afternoon. The apartment was small but full of light. The walls were blank, the shelves empty, the floor echoing with every footstep. But it was mine. Mine to fill, mine to choose, mine to begin again.
The first few weeks in Oregon were quiet. I spent my mornings walking along tree-lined streets, the kind that stayed damp even after the sun came out. I learned the names of local shop owners, found a bakery that made bread so good it felt like a secret, and discovered a little path behind my apartment that led to a hidden meadow where I could sit and write for hours. I didn't rush into anything. I didn't fill the silence just to avoid feeling alone. I let it be what it was, a blank page, a new chapter. The nonprofit work was challenging in a different way than I was used to. The kids came from every kind of background, some angry, some guarded, some overflowing with emotion and nowhere to put it. They didn't care where I came from or what I'd been through. They just wanted someone to show up, consistently, and mean it. I did. Day after day, I showed up. And something about that, about being needed without being judged, healed me in places I didn't even know were still broken. One afternoon, a boy named Liam stayed behind after class. He was 15, always quiet, always watching. That day, he handed me a story he'd written. It was about a man who built a house out of glass, thinking it would let in all the light, But over time, the sun burned too hot, and the man had to learn how to build shade. Is this about someone you know? I asked. Liam shrugged. It's just something I made up. I didn't press him, but later, sitting alone, I read the story again and realized how much it mirrored my own life. I too had built something that looked perfect. I too had learned the hard way that beauty without protection can become unbearable. In late spring, I met someone new. Her name was Rachel. We met at the local library, both reaching for the same book. It wasn't love at first sight. It wasn't fireworks or skipped heartbeats. It was slower, softer. She was kind, curious, and asked about the world like it still surprised her. We got coffee, then dinner, then long walks in the evening mist. I told her the truth, not all at once, but in pieces. About Sarah, about Claire, about the way I'd once lost myself, trying to hold on to people who weren't ready to stay. She listened, not with pity, but with presence. She didn't try to fix me. She didn't make promises. She just showed up, and I did too. We took our time. There were no expectations, no labels, just two people learning how to be open again. One night, as we sat on a bench watching the sun set over the water, she turned to me and said, "Do you think people can really start over, or are we all just carrying new stories on top of old ones?" I thought about it for a while. Then I said, maybe starting over doesn't mean forgetting the past. Maybe it just means finally learning how to carry it without letting it crush you. She smiled and leaned her head on my shoulder. In that moment, I didn't feel like a man who had been betrayed. I didn't feel like someone rebuilding after failure. I felt like someone who had finally arrived. Messy, imperfect, but present, fully, finally present. That night, I wrote something in my journal, a line I think I'd been waiting years to believe. I am not what happened to me. I am what I chose to become after. And with that, the story I'd been carrying for so long finally let go of me. Not because I pushed it away, but because I had finally walked far enough that it didn't need to follow anymore. I closed the journal, turned off the light, and went to sleep. No ghosts, no anger, just the sound of rain against the window and the quiet, steady breath of someone who was finally at peace.